In the heart of modern Asia, where neon lights flicker just above cracked sidewalks, where convenience meets silence, and where the past, no matter how buried, never truly lets go, there are places where something waits. Something left behind. This is Ghosts of Asia, where ancient beliefs whisper through concrete walls, where rituals forgotten still linger like the scent of old incense, and where every quiet room might remember the soul who once lived and never left. Tonight, we journey to Tokyo, to a narrow apartment complex tucked between noise and nothing, where the rent is cheap, but the price you pay isn't measured in yen, because some rooms are never really empty. They're just waiting for the next substitute. This is the story of the substitute tenant. And if you're ever told not to open a door at night, don't. The rain had just stopped when Hiroko stepped off the train at Nakano station. The streets still glistened under the late afternoon sky, neon reflections shimmering in shallow puddles. Tokyo was winding down, but in a way only Tokyo could, quietly humming beneath the surface. Even in its silence, it pulsed with unseen motion, a city made of steel, old ghosts, and strange gaps between people. She gripped the strap of her leather bag, newly scuffed from travel, and looked up at the looming structure a few blocks away, a narrow 6-story apartment complex squeezed between a 24-hour soba shop and a long shuttered laundromat. Its sign read simply, Yamabuki Heights, a forgettable name for a place meant to be forgotten. It was exactly what Hiroko wanted. Just days before, she'd been living with her boyfriend in a high-rise in Shibuya. But breakups in Tokyo aren't always loud. Sometimes they're quiet. A toothbrush gone, a single plate in the sink, a silence that stretches so long you forget what sound used to feel like. She didn't want memories. She wanted space. Cheap, clean, quiet space. And somehow, apartment 201 had all three. The real estate agent met her at the door, bowing more from habit than hospitality. His name was Tanimura, older, balding, polite in a way that felt practiced. He handed her the keys without ceremony, as though he'd already detached from the transaction before she arrived. "Top floor, corner unit," he said, pointing. "Nice view." She nodded, grateful. "There's a small shrine across the alley, old one, from when this area was still farmland. You'll hear the bells sometimes." "I don't mind," Hiroko said. He hesitated. "One thing, about the closet." She paused, half turning toward him. "There's a sliding closet next to the bed, left side of the unit." "Okay." "It sticks," he said with a shrug. "Old wood, warped, makes a mess if you force it." She smiled awkwardly. "Right, got it." But his eyes lingered a moment longer than they should have. Then he bowed again, gave her a folder with building regulations, and walked off into the dusk, umbrella tapping rhythmically on the sidewalk. Inside, apartment 201 was modest. 6 tatami mats in the main room, a tiny kitchenette with a squeaky faucet, a window that opened to a surprisingly nice view of the street below, framed by crooked telephone wires, and a skyline of distant apartments stacked like shoeboxes. It wasn't beautiful, but it felt safe. The left wall held the infamous closet, a wooden sliding door painted in faded beige, trimmed with dark lacquer that had chipped over time. It didn't look menacing, just old, boring even, the kind of feature you'd ignore after a week of living there. Hiroko unpacked slowly, stacking her sketchbooks near the window, laying out her bedding and placing her kettle on the single gas burner. She didn't bring much, just enough to start over, or at least pretend she was. That night, she boiled water, made instant miso, and ate silently on the floor while listening to the city murmur far below. Horns, footsteps, the occasional chime of a bicycle bell. But inside the building, nothing. Not a single voice, not even the creak of pipes or the muffled thump of footsteps above. It was strange, almost unnerving how deeply the quiet settled in, like the walls had swallowed all sound and didn't intend to give it back. She lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, watching shadows crawl slowly across the plaster from a passing train's light. Her eyes drifted toward the closet. She could see the faint outline of its frame even in the dark. It was just a door. She closed her eyes and let the silence press against her ears until sleep took her. At 1:33 a.m., she awoke. Not abruptly, not from a dream, just awake. There was no sound, no movement, just the persistent feeling that something had shifted. The air was heavier, cooler, as though someone had opened a window that didn't exist. Her eyes drifted to the closet. Nothing moved. She waited. Still nothing. Eventually, she sighed, turned over and pulled the blanket higher over her shoulders. Her phone buzzed once. She didn't check it. The next morning, everything felt normal again. Sunlight filtered through the curtains. The kettle whistled. She sipped coffee and opened her laptop to begin a new freelance project, a packaging design for a Kyoto tea brand. She sketched for hours, barely leaving the floor. But around noon, she noticed something odd. Her brushes, meticulously packed the night before, were arranged differently, lined up in a way she never placed them. She frowned. Maybe she was tired, distracted, forgetful. But that night, it happened again. 1:33 a.m., awake. No dream, no noise, just that pressure again. She stared at the closet door. It remained shut. She turned her back to it, but sleep came slower this time. The following afternoon, she ran into a neighbor on the stairwell, a woman in her 50s, carrying 2 bags of groceries. She wore thick glasses and walked with the kind of caution that suggested she'd lived in the building for years. 201? The woman asked, eyeing her. Yes, I just moved in. The woman stared, not rudely, just too long. Then she smiled, tight-lipped. Welcome, she said, tip-lipped. That unit's been empty for a while. Oh, Hiroko asked. I thought someone was here before me. The woman nodded. There was, but she left in the middle of the night, never came back. Hiroko's stomach dipped. Why? No one knows. She shrugged. She left the closet open. Then she turned and walked upstairs, disappearing around the bend. Hiroko stood there for a long time, groceries in hand, heart thudding harder than she could explain. That night, she placed a chair in front of the closet door, just in case. At 1:33 a.m., she woke again. She didn't move, didn't breathe. She stared at the closet, and for just a moment, barely a second, she heard it, the faintest sound of paper rustling, like someone flipping through a notebook. Then silence. She opened the light. The chair had not moved. The closet remained closed. But she didn't sleep again. She opened her laptop and began searching. Unusual sounds in apartment closet. 1:33 a.m., paranormal Japan. Apartment cursed sliding door. All she found were forum posts, superstitions, Old stories of zashiki warashi, childlike spirits dwelling in homes, bringing luck or mischief, depending on whether they were acknowledged or ignored. One comment stood out. If you feel watched at night, try leaving out red thread. Spirits use it to trace their way back. If they take it, they're trying to leave. If they return it, they're staying. She didn't know why, but that chilled her more than the sounds. By the third night, the sound changed. It wasn't just paper. She heard a drawer open, then close, and something else. Breathing. Shallow. Calm. Right behind the door. She didn't move, didn't even blink. When it stopped, she waited until dawn before daring to stand. She slid the closet door open slowly. Inside was nothing but her clothes, neatly hung, unmoved. But as she reached to slide it shut again, her fingers brushed something on the floor. A pencil. Not hers. By morning, the pencil was gone. Hiroko remembered exactly where she'd placed it, on her desk beside her sketch pad. She had turned it over in her finger several times before deciding to keep it. It was unfamiliar, heavier than her usual ones, with a faint floral imprint on the side. She thought she might draw with it later, or at least compare it to the rest of her tools. But now it had vanished, not rolled on her furniture, not in her pencil bag, just gone. In its place sat one of her pencils, the kind she always used, identical in make, except worn down, as if it had been used the night before. She stared at it for a long time. Then she closed the closet slowly, without looking inside, and left it shut. Outside, the world continued like nothing was wrong. Tokyo was many things, crowded, fast, impatient, but never still. That was what struck Hiroko most in those early days, how quiet everything seemed inside Yamabuki Heights. No neighbor sounds, no television, no murmurs through the walls. It was as if the building was suspended in time. She decided to leave the apartment that afternoon and work from a cafe near Nakano Broadway, where the noise of everyday life might ground her. A child screaming over gotcha machines, the dull echo of clinking dishes, something real, something now. While sketching, she texted a few friends she hadn't seen since the breakup. "Hey, wanna catch up soon? I moved to Nakano. New apartment, quiet. Too quiet, maybe, haha." One replied, "Didn't we see you yesterday at Hashino? You were acting weird." Hiroko blinked. She hadn't left the apartment at all the previous day, not even to go downstairs. "Are you sure it was me?" she wrote back. "You didn't say hi, you just stared, then left." Something cold crawled up her spine. That night, she placed her phone beside the futon and left the camera app open. No recording, just the black screen and a small red dot blinking quietly in the corner. She didn't expect anything to happen, but at exactly 1:33 a.m., her eyes opened on their own, like someone had whispered her name just loud enough to reach her in sleep. She stared at the closet. There was no sound at first. Then, faintly, paper again. Rustling, not like pages turning, but like blueprints being unfolded, large, careful, intentional. She didn't move, she didn't want to move. The sound stopped. A soft tap followed. Then, the breathing. Not panicked, not loud, just present, as if someone was meditating behind the door. She watched the screen on her phone. It remained black, no movement. She lifted it slowly. The screen glitched just for a second, one red line across the center, like a cut. then nothing. By morning, she checked the camera roll. No recording had saved, no memory used. But in her photo album, she found something she didn't remember taking. One image, blurred, low contrast, of her closet. The door was open just a crack, and something inside was moving. It was too faint to make out, nothing clear enough to identify. But in the darkness, it looked like a person crouching low, sketching. Their shoulders were hunched, their face hidden by hair. But the outline of their clothes, it looked like her hoodie, the blue one she'd been wearing for 3 days straight. She deleted the image, then checked the closet again. It was still shut. That morning, Hiroko walked to the management office on the first floor. She pressed the buzzer for the on-site supervisor, an old man named Arai, who lived in Unit 003 and tended to the building's maintenance. He answered the door in a stained shirt and slacks, his hair thin and damp with sweat. "Yes?" he said. "I'm in 201. I just had a question." He nodded, slowly. "About the closet?" he said, before she could finish. She froze. "Other tenants," he added, "always asked about the same thing. What did they say?" He scratched his chin. "Said it made noises. Papers, drawers, sometimes humming. Did you ever check it?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped aside and gestured toward a wall of old maintenance reports taped to a corkboard. Most were faded or scribbled over, but one stood out. It was labeled Closet 201, RE Disappearance. No date, no signature, just a note written in red ink. "Do not attempt to repair. Presence claimed." She looked up. Arai was already closing the door. Back upstairs, she pushed her futon farther from the closet and covered the door with a large towel. It didn't help much, but it felt like something. That night, she didn't sleep. She waited. She set an alarm for 1:30 a.m. and sat cross-legged on the floor, facing the closet, camera ready. The room was cold. The air refused to move. Even the hum of her phone charger felt too loud. At 1:33, the first sound arrived. A click, then the paper, then a slide, and then a whisper. Hiroko didn't breathe. The whisper was too low to understand, but it repeated 4, maybe 5 times. A single word, said slowly. She brought the camera up. Again, glitch. This time the screen froze entirely. Her reflection stared back at her in the dark glass. Except she wasn't holding the phone. She dropped it. The screen went black. When she picked it up again, it had shut off. Battery dead. Fully charged moments before. She didn't open the closet. She didn't sleep. When morning came, the light felt wrong, like it didn't belong in the room anymore. Her clothes had been refolded in her drawer, perfectly, neatly, every tag facing the same direction. She hadn't done that. She never folded like that. And the blue hoodie? Missing. That evening, she went to a local shrine, a small one, the one across the alley, barely maintained. She threw in a coin, clapped twice, and bowed, though she didn't know what to pray for. Peace? Understanding? Escape? The wind picked up as she stood there, carrying the sound of small bells in the distance. She almost turned to leave, but an old woman sat nearby, feeding birds. "You live in the building, don't you?" the woman asked softly. "Yes," Hiroko said. The woman smiled, not kindly. "Your face has already changed," she said. Hiroko stared. The woman looked back at the birds. "Don't try to fight it. You'll only make her stay longer." "Who?" The woman said nothing more, just kept feeding the birds. That night, Hiroko placed her red sketching thread beneath the closet door. Just a small piece, no wider than a hairband. A test, a signal. If the spirit wanted to leave, it would take the thread. If not... She didn't finish the thought. She just waited. 1:33 a.m. Awake again. This time, she didn't open her eyes. She just listened. There was no rustling, no breathing, only silence for 1 long minute. And then, slide. The sound of wood moving against wood. She opened her eyes slowly. The towel had fallen. The closet door was slightly open. And the thread? Still there, but tied into a perfect bow. The bow stayed there all morning, tied with care, perfectly centered. Hiroko hadn't touched it. She couldn't bring herself to. It wasn't just the knot, it was the intention behind it. A kind of silent reply, not aggressive, not even threatening, but intimate, like someone leaving a note on your pillow, a quiet message. "I'm here, and I know you're watching." That day, Hiroko didn't work. She couldn't. Every time she opened her laptop, she saw flashes of that closet in her mind, glimpses of movement behind the door, the sound of paper, the drawn-out whisper she still couldn't decode. So instead, she bought a motion-activated camera. Nothing fancy, just a small infrared cube she could place across the room, set to record automatically whenever it detected movement. She positioned it carefully, far from the closet, out of view, hidden in a ceramic planter beside the futon. She checked the angle twice, making sure the door was fully visible. Then she left the apartment, just for the afternoon. She needed to be away from it, even for a few hours. She went to Kichijoji, walked through Inokashira Park, bought a matcha latte, sat by the water, watched couples walk by, watched people with lives that didn't feel watched. And for the first time in days, she exhaled without weight in her chest. When she returned just after sunset, nothing felt out of place. No towels on the floor, no open closet, no moved brushes or folded clothes. But the camera light was blinking, meaning it had been triggered. She connected it to her laptop. The footage showed nothing at first. Hours of stillness, dust floating in the air, the curtain shifting once from a breeze. Then, 1:33:56 a.m., movement detected. She watched closely. Nothing moved. But at 1:33:02, the screen glitched. Just for a moment, a single stutter in the footage, less than a second, a static blur across the closet door. She rewound, paused, advanced frame by frame, and then, at 1:35:07, one frame, just one, a still image that froze her blood. There was someone inside the closet, sitting cross-legged, sketching in a notebook, their face turned slightly toward the camera but covered by hair. They wore her hoodie, her pants, even her mismatched socks. And the face, the shape of the face was hers, but wrong. Like someone had traced her features from memory and something had warped in the lines. The eyes were too dark, the mouth too still, and the hand holding the pencil, it was trembling. She closed the laptop, then opened it again. The image was still there. She saved it, then deleted it, then emptied the trash. But in her mind, the image stayed, burned behind her eyelids. She hadn't seen a ghost. She'd seen herself. That night, She didn't sleep at all. She sat on the floor, staring at the closet. It remained closed. She wrapped a bell around the handle, a small silver one from her keychain, just to know if it moved. But it didn't ring. The door didn't move. The closet stayed silent. But at 1:33 a.m., her phone buzzed. A notification. New login detected. Location, Tokyo. Unknown device. She blinked. Then another message. Your Instagram account was accessed from a new session. She opened the app. Live video was streaming from her account. The screen showed a dark room, her room, but not from the angle of her camera. This footage was coming from inside the closet, and it was streaming her, sleeping. Except she was not asleep. She was sitting on the floor watching the screen in horror. She looked up toward the closet. The stream ended. The app closed itself. She dropped the phone. It buzzed again. A message from an unknown user. You look peaceful tonight. The next morning, she filed a report with the platform, changed all her passwords, activated two-step authentication, deleted everything she could. But she knew it wasn't a hack. It wasn't malware. It was personal, and it was already inside. The following night, she removed the bell from the closet and opened it fully. She did it at 2:15 a.m., after the window, after the hour, just to be safe, just to feel like she had control. Inside was nothing but her clothes, except one thing. At the back of the closet, tucked between two hanging jackets, was a sketchbook, old, yellowed. She hadn't seen it before. She didn't own it. She opened the cover slowly. There was no name, no title, just drawings of the apartment from inside the closet, from the perspective of someone watching her sleep, work, eat. Pages and pages, all in pencil, all signed with her name, except the signature was written in pre-war kanji, characters she didn't use, that hadn't been taught in schools for decades. She flipped to the last page. It showed her, sitting on the floor, head tilted, eyes empty, and beneath the drawing, I live here now. Ima, koko ni sundeiru. That day, she returned to the building management office, but the door was locked. No lights on, no answer. She rang the buzzer again and again. No one came. She checked her phone. The building's management company, Koshin Real Estate, had no listings online, no business license registered in Tokyo, not even a website. She searched the company name again. A single result, an archived message board from 2009, thread title. Does anyone know Koshin Real Estate in Nakano? They vanished after my sister went missing. She spent the rest of the day walking, through alleys, along the train tracks, anywhere with noise, people, life. She returned home after dark. The apartment was colder than before, and it smelled faintly of incense, old incense, the kind burned for the dead. That night, she didn't set a camera. She didn't make tea. She didn't even turn on the lights. She sat in the dark and waited. At 1:33 a.m., the closet creaked, just slightly. She didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, a whisper. From behind the door, a voice, soft, feminine, her own voice, repeating a single word. Not Japanese, not English, just a sound, over and over, like a chant. She pressed her palms to the floor to ground herself, and as she did, she felt something cold under her hand. A single pencil, the same one as before, heavy, floral.
and freshly sharpened.
Hiroko didn't leave the apartment the next day. She barely moved. She sat with the sketchbook in her lap, flipping through it again and again, searching for anything that could explain it. Some watermark, an old page, a date. But the pages seemed to change. Or perhaps her memory was breaking. Drawings she remembered weren't there. New ones had appeared. A sketch of her holding a cup by the window. Another of her brushing her teeth. Each one impossibly accurate, down to the chipped rim of her mug, the way her hair frizzed at the ends when it rained. And yet, the angles were wrong. They were drawn from inside the closet. Every image looked like the perspective of someone watching. Page by page, she felt less like the owner of the apartment and more like an actor in someone else's room. That afternoon, she tried reaching out to friends again. She called Ayaka, her best friend from college. The phone rang once, twice, then voicemail. She tried Rika, then Kenji. Each one sent her to voicemail or declined the call. Her hands trembled as she typed out a group message. "Please tell me if something's wrong. Are you all avoiding me?" No one responded. But 30 minutes later, Ayaka texted, "You literally came by yesterday and told us you were deleting all your socials. You were off, really off." Hiroko stared at the screen. She hadn't seen them in weeks. She hadn't even left Nakano. She typed, "That wasn't me." The 3 dots appeared. Ayaka was typing. Then they vanished. No reply. That evening, she opened her social media accounts again. Something felt off. The bio had changed. Just a single sentence now. "I was here first." Her profile photo replaced. A photo of her sleeping, taken from an angle she couldn't explain. Worse, there were videos on her feed. Videos she hadn't uploaded. Live clips of her pacing the apartment, cooking, drawing, and one of her standing in front of the closet, staring at it for over 5 minutes without blinking. It had 3,300 views, dozens of comments, some mocking, some disturbed, but one stuck out. "She doesn't even blink. Is that even real?" Hiroko's heart raced as she scrolled. One more video, posted at 1:37 a.m. the night before. It showed her face, close up, expressionless, whispering something to the camera. No audio, just movement. She didn't remember filming it. She didn't even remember standing up. She clicked play again, watched herself lean forward, her mouth forming words she couldn't hear. But on the 6th loop, she began to understand. The lips were saying, "You are me now." Panicking, she deleted the entire account, or tried to. But each time she confirmed the deletion, the screen glitched and reset. When she returned to the home page, the profile remained. The photo now showed her sitting in the dark, smiling. The caption had changed again. "Don't leave." She shut the laptop and screamed, not out of fear, but helplessness. It wasn't just that she was being watched. It was that someone had taken the idea of her and started replacing it. Not violently, not with possession, but through subtle substitution. Her work, her voice, her place. She walked to the bathroom, gripped the edges of the sink, and looked into the mirror. Her reflection looked back. Same face, same tired eyes, but something was wrong. It was too still, like the image paused a second before her movements. She raised her hand. The reflection followed, but just a beat too slow. Then it smiled.
She did not. Her knees buckled. She backed away and slammed the bathroom door shut. From the other side of the mirror, she thought she heard a voice, soft, like her own, laughing. That night, she opened the closet, deliberately. Nothing inside, just the faint scent of dust and pine wood, but she left it open, sat across from it, waited. 1:33 a.m. No movement, no whisper. But in the quiet, she felt her phone buzz again. This time, a notification from her email. New sign-in alert. Graphic design submission accepted. She blinked. She hadn't submitted anything that day. She opened the email. It was from a client she hadn't spoken to in weeks. Hi, Hiroko. Thanks for the revised packaging design. Loved the concept, especially the detail in the hand-drawn tea leaves. Just wired the payment. Cheers. Attached was the design. Exactly in her style. Even the brushstroke watermark. But she had not made it. She opened her design software. The file was there. Time-stamped. Last modified 2:11 a.m. She had been asleep. Or at least, she thought she had been. When she turned off her laptop and looked toward the closet, the door was open wider. But she hadn't heard it move. Inside, the floor was clean, empty, except for one new item, folded neatly on the floor. Her blue hoodie, washed, pressed, and laid out like a uniform. The next morning, Hiroko walked aimlessly, trying to make sense of herself. Every window she passed showed her reflection, but each one felt off. In one, she smiled without smiling. In another, she walked slightly behind herself. And once, she saw nothing at all, just an empty sidewalk where she should have been. She called her old apartment building in Shibuya, hoping to speak to her ex, to ask anything, if he remembered her, if he thought she was losing her mind. The manager answered, said no one by that name ever lived there, said the unit had been empty for years. She checked the lease agreement. Her name was there, but the signature was not hers. The handwriting was too old, too perfect. She checked the date, signed 5 years ago. That night, she stood in the center of the room and whispered, "Who are you?" No answer. She whispered again, "Why me?" Silence. Then her phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "You open the door. That means you accept." She screamed again, this time at the closet. "You're not me! You'll never be me!" No response. She tore down the sketchbook, burned it in the sink, watched the pages curl and turn black. The flames flickered, smoked. But the next morning, it was back on her desk, completely intact, open to a fresh page, a new drawing of her, face down on the floor, sleeping, while a shadow figure stood behind her, gently brushing her hair. She began waking up exhausted, not tired, drained, like someone had taken her energy and poured it into another vessel. Every morning, her body felt heavier, every movement slower, as if her limbs belonged to someone else and she was only borrowing them. She started setting alarms throughout the night, 11 p.m., 12 a.m., 1:15 a.m., 1:33 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., but none of them ever woke her. In the morning, the alarms were all marked as dismissed by her fingerprint, and still she couldn't remember a thing.
One morning, she opened her laptop and found it on. Tabs open, files modified, messages sent. Her email outbox showed a string of correspondence with a new client. Logo design, quick turnaround, high pay. Every message was polite, professional, and sounded exactly like her. The tone, the formatting, the sign-off. Best, Hiroko. Only, she had no memory of any of it. She opened the design file. It was perfect. Too perfect. The kind of work she usually took days to draft had been completed overnight, down to the signature watermark. And the timestamp? 1:58 a.m. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the layers of the file. It was hers, but not her. There was something colder in the line work, something practiced but hollow. She minimized the window, opened her browser, typed her own name, and there it was, a portfolio site, slick, minimalist, claiming years of work she hadn't done, client logos she didn't recognize, testimonials from names she'd never met. But the photo, it was of her, standing in her room, wearing the blue hoodie, expression blank, eyes wide, captioned beneath, Hiroko Nara, Tokyo-based designer, available anytime. She tried calling the police, but the words wouldn't come. She held the phone in her hand, thumb hovering over the dial, for nearly 10 minutes. Her mind whispered, "And what will you say? That a ghost was drawing for her? That she was being replaced by a version of herself who didn't blink? That her soul was being overwritten?" She put the phone down. She wasn't even sure if she still existed in a way they could trace. That night, she placed a mirror at the foot of her futon, not to look at herself, but to catch herself if she got up, if she moved in the night. She pointed her camera at the mirror, hit record, then wrapped herself in her blanket and whispered, "Don't move, don't move, don't move." She fell asleep with that phrase in her mouth. In the morning, she checked the footage, fast-forwarded. The mirror showed nothing for the first hour. Then, at 1:31 a.m., movement. Her body sat up, mechanically, eyes closed. She rose to her feet, stretched, walked toward the desk, opened the laptop, typed, clicked, worked. For over an hour, expressionless, efficient. And then, at 2:43 a.m., she stood in front of the mirror, smiled, but in the reflection, she was frowning. Her body smiled, but her reflection stayed still. Then the body walked out of frame, and the reflection kept staring for 6 more minutes, alone, watching the camera, and then it blinked. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. There was no fear left, only eclipse. Like watching your own shadow detach from your feet and start walking on its own. She went to the closet the next day, knelt in front of it, opened it slowly. "Are you me?" she whispered. Silence. "Do you want this life?" Nothing. She placed her old college ID inside, her photo, her name, her handwriting, a kind of offering or surrender. That night, her phone buzzed again, a live stream link from her old account. She hadn't used it in days. The screen showed her apartment, but the lighting was wrong, softer, warmer, candlelit. The futon was made, the floor swept, and in the frame, there she was, sitting cross-legged, wearing a new white blouse, sketching, smiling gently, her hair pinned back in a way she hadn't worn in years. She looked peaceful, until the woman on the stream looked directly at the camera and mouthed, "Go to sleep." The stream cut out, her lights flickered. Then her phone shut down entirely.
She awoke the next morning at her desk. New designs open, a new message sent, a payment received, and next to her laptop, a receipt for a delivery, a new set of art supplies, same brand she always used, same brush set, ordered at 2:07 a.m. She hadn't touched her phone, hadn't moved, or so she thought. Later that day, she passed a neighbor in the stairwell, a man in his 40s. She'd seen him only once before. He paused, stared at her. "Weren't you just here?" he asked. "No, I just came downstairs." He frowned. "I saw you walking back up 5 minutes ago. You were wearing red." She looked down at herself. Blue hoodie, black pants. He kept staring, then muttered, never mind, and disappeared around the corner. She returned to her room, locked the door, and looked through her closet. At the far back, behind everything, was a red blouse, one she'd never owned, still on its hanger, still warm. It was raining again. Not the dramatic kind, just a quiet, steady drizzle, soft against the windows like fingernails tapping. The kind of rain that makes time feel slower, that makes memory feel heavier. Hiroko stared at the red blouse for a long time. It still smelled faintly of soap. It still felt warm at the collar. She folded it carefully, like one might fold evidence, and tucked it into a drawer, far away from her own clothes. Then she sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and typed Yamabuki Heights Apartment History. Tenant Disappearance, Tokyo. Closet Urban Legends, Japan. Nakano Apartment, Police Report. Nothing, at first. A few real estate listings, a blog post from 5 years ago about Nakano's haunted buildings, urban legends, comments about disappearing mail and weird smells, but no concrete names, no addresses, until she found a message board thread, buried beneath layers of cached pages, titled simply, Room 201, Was She the First? It was started by someone named K.H., dated March 2016. My sister lived in room 201 for 8 months, said the place was too quiet, said she felt like someone else was living with her. Then one day she stopped responding. No calls, no texts, nothing. Police broke in. Everything was still there. Phone, wallet, laptop, but she was gone. Only thing left out of place was the closet. It was half open. Inside was a notebook titled, I Was Here First. No fingerprints on it, not even hers. There were no replies, no follow-ups, just silence, as if the thread had been abandoned, buried on purpose. Hiroko's hands shook as she copied the username and searched deeper. She found another comment from KH, buried in a separate thread about Tokyo disappearances. I gave the police the notebook. They said the building had no record of her ever living there. I tried to show them the lease. It was gone. Even the emails. It's like the room erased her. Hiroko looked down at her own phone, checked her lease agreement. Still there. Still her name. But the date? Changed. Now it said signed 2016. The same year KH's sister vanished. Her heart skipped a beat. She scrolled to the bottom of the PDF, and there was a scanned signature. It was her name, but written in the same pre-war kanji as the sketchbook. She didn't write kanji like that. She'd never used those forms. It wasn't her signature. Not truly. But it was on the lease. And that meant, on paper, she had been living there since 2016, for 9 years. She stood up too fast. The room swayed, like the air had grown heavier with each click of the mouse. She grabbed her coat and left the apartment. Downstairs, she knocked on the building supervisor's door again. This time, he answered. Arai looked older than before. Or maybe she had never really looked at him. He stared at her like she was already a memory. "You saw the notebook, didn't you?" he asked. I nodded. He didn't invite her in, didn't open the door past the chain. "You're the third," he said. "The third what?" "The third girl in that room who's tried to leave." Hiroko's mouth dried. "What happened to the others?" He paused. "They stopped being noticed." He explained in fragments. In the 1950s, Yamabuki Heights was government housing. Post-war Tokyo was rebuilding. The city needed workers. Women, unmarried, childless, were offered cheap housing in exchange for factory jobs and silence. Some rooms were never officially assigned. Sometimes girls would leave without notice. Other times, they were replaced. No paperwork, no questions. One girl disappears, another arrives. Life continues. Rent gets paid. No one asks why. There were whispers, even then, that the building had a memory of its own, that if someone vanished without a proper ritual, the spirit stayed behind, and that if the room went too long without an occupant, it chose someone. "A spirit? You mean a ghost?" Arai shook his head. "Not a ghost. A replacement." He held up one finger. "Ghosts want to be seen. They knock, they scream, they shake the walls." He held up a second. "Replacements don't want attention. They slip in, quietly. They wear your clothes. They use your name. And one day..." He didn't finish, just looked at her with tired eyes and said, "You haven't opened the closet fully, have you?" She swallowed. "I did." Arai closed the door, locked it, didn't say goodbye. She stood there in the hallway, trembling. The rain had stopped, but her skin was clammy with cold. She heard a faint sound above her, the soft thud of drawers being opened. Back in her own apartment. But she was downstairs, and she lived alone. She ran. Up the stairs, 2 steps at a time, burst into her apartment, empty, silent, except for the closet. The door was open. Her drawers had been rifled through. The blue hoodie was back on its hanger, but her wallet gone, her sketchbook gone, and on the floor inside the closet, a single photo, black and white, old, faded. It showed a woman sitting cross-legged inside a closet, sketching, wearing 1950s workwear, expressionless. The back of the photo said, "Sasaki Naruko, room 201, dated 1953. That night, Hiroko slept on the floor by the door, fully dressed, keys in hand. But at 1:33 a.m., she still woke up. She still heard it. Not paper, not breathing. This time, a voice, soft, whispering, right next to her ear. Don't run.
The next morning, the light through the window felt wrong. It wasn't soft. It was gray, flat and dim, like sunlight trying to push through something thick and unseen, like memory. Hiroko sat on the floor, legs pulled tight against her chest, staring at the closet door. It was shut now. No one had closed it, at least not her. And in its perfect stillness, she felt something watching, not from inside it, but as if the room itself had begun to develop eyes. She made tea with shaking hands, no appetite. She didn't open her laptop. She didn't check her phone. Instead, she walked to the window and looked out across the street, at the alley between buildings, and at the small, overgrown shrine tucked behind a rusted vending machine. It was older than the rest of the neighborhood, a forgotten stone altar nearly buried under moss and cigarette butts. She watched it for a long time. Nothing moved, and yet something there felt awake. That afternoon, Hiroko went to the local records office. She didn't ask about hauntings. She didn't use words like ghost or spirit or replacement. She just said she was researching the building for historical design reference. The clerk, an older woman with a long memory and a slow voice, retrieved 2 old blueprints, both labeled Yamabuki Heights, Municipal Housing, 1951. One was a basic layout, 6 floors, 5 units per level. Nothing unusual. The second, different, marked confidential, and stamped with an old Ministry of Labor seal. It showed the same floors, but with additional, unlabeled chambers behind several closets, hidden compartments, narrow crawl spaces, observation gaps. The clerk frowned. "This one shouldn't be here," she said. "We were told to discard the older drafts after redevelopment in '82. Hiroko asked if she could take a copy. The woman hesitated, then nodded. "Keep it quiet, okay?" Back in her apartment, Hiroko laid both blueprints side by side. The room went cold. There it was, apartment 201, her unit, her closet, and behind it, a hollow space, no more than 1 meter deep, accessible only from within, unmarked on the official layout. Her breath caught in her throat. She reached into her backpack and pulled out the photo of the woman from 1953, Sasaki Noriko. She held it up next to the blueprint. The angle of the drawing in the photo, it made sense now. Noriko had been sitting inside that hollow space, facing outward, sketching, watching. She took a flashlight and opened the closet, pushed the coats aside, ran her fingers along the back panel. It felt wrong, too smooth, too new. She knocked. It echoed, hollow. She pressed harder, and with a faint creak, a hidden panel slid sideways, revealing a narrow, pitch-black cavity. Dust swirled in the beam of her light. The space was small, just enough for a person to sit cross-legged. Inside was a folded blanket, an empty teacup, a stub of burned incense, and a notebook, bound in red twine. She picked it up carefully, afraid it would crumble. The first page was blank, the second too. But on the third, "To take her place, you must live as her. To live as her, you must forget yourself. The room remembers who stays. The room forgets who leaves." Her mouth dried. She flipped through dozens more pages, lists of names, rough sketches of faces, fragments of memories written in a delicate looping script. Some of the names were crossed out, others were written over. All women, all tenants of room 201. And one name,
was hers, Hiroko Nara, dated 2016, but the writing was not hers. It was the same handwriting from the pre-war kanji, the same from the lease, the sketchbook, the signature that kept following her, as if someone had decided she'd already been here, long before she remembered. The final page was a drawing of a woman opening the closet and a second woman waiting inside, smiling. The caption below read, "The new becomes the old makes room." That night, she didn't sleep. She kept the flashlight beside her, kept the notebook sealed in a Ziploc bag, her door locked. But at 1:33 a.m., the lights flickered, and the closet creaked open again. No footsteps, no breath, just a single sound, the click of her laptop powering on. She stood slowly, turned toward the sound. The screen glowed. A new file had been created, untitled. She opened it. Inside, a single line: "Don't fight the pattern." She slammed the laptop shut. She gathered her things, backpack, phone, ID. She was going to a hotel, anywhere. She would leave tonight. She turned to grab her shoes. They weren't where she left them. In their place, 2 slippers. Traditional, worn, faded, like they'd belonged to someone decades ago. Inside one of them, her name stitched in red thread, Hiroko Nara. The thread was fresh, still slightly damp. She backed away, heart racing, but as she reached for the door, her key turned in her hand and snapped right at the base. She was locked in. She dropped to the floor, shaking, breathing too fast, fighting the overwhelming sense that she had never left, that she had always been here, that the version of her outside, the one that had friends, that drank matcha and kichijoji, that laughed, was fading, a shadow of a memory, and that this Hiroko, the one now inside, was the only one who had ever truly existed. She stared at the closet, and the voice returned from behind the panel, faint, warm. "You're almost ready." The apartment was too quiet, not peaceful, still, like sound had been vacuumed from the air, and even her own breath didn't want to make noise anymore. Hiroko sat on the floor, back pressed against the front door, the broken key in her hand like a snapped bone. She didn't cry. There was no space left inside her for fear or anger or confusion, only the quiet realization that the room was no longer waiting. It had already begun. At dawn, she opened the closet again, pulled everything out: coats, storage boxes, old shoes, every inch of the floor. And that's when she saw it. A crack, hairline thin, running along the edge of the baseboard. She knelt, pried at it with the edge of her scissors, and felt something shift. The floor panel popped loose with a dry snap. Beneath it, an old wooden compartment warped by time and moisture. Inside, a folded piece of red paper, brittle at the edges. A fountain pen, long dried out. A black ribbon, and a single photo. She reached for the paper first, carefully unfolded it. It wasn't blank. It was a letter, written in delicate, slanted kanji. To the one who comes after. I didn't mean to stay. I thought I could live here for a few months, just until I found something better. But the room liked me. It started helping, fixing my sketches, doing my work. At first, I was grateful. Then I was numb. Then I was gone. Signed, Yuko Natsume, 1997. Hiroko stared at the letter for a long time, her hands trembling. The paper smelled faintly of ash and mold. She picked up the pen. It was cracked, the metal tip corroded. But when she scratched it lightly against her sketch pad, ink flowed. Dark, glossy, too thick. It didn't bleed like ink. It clung to the paper like oil. She dropped the pen, checked her fingers. They were stained black. No smell, no texture, just wrong. The photo was last. It showed a woman in the apartment, standing beside the closet. She looked familiar. Not entirely, but enough to raise the hairs on Hiroko's arms. She flipped the photo over. It had no caption, but written in black ink along the bottom corner was, "She lasted 3 weeks." That was longer than most. The door was still locked. The windows wouldn't open. Not stuck, sealed. She tried calling the building manager again. No answer. She tried calling a locksmith. The number was invalid. She checked the building's listing online. Gone. The agency website redirected to a generic landing page. She searched her own name. Nothing. No LinkedIn, no website, no email, no registration. Even her bank account showed zero activity, no balance, no login history. It was like she'd never existed. That night, she lit a candle, sat in the center of the room with the red paper in front of her, and whispered, "I remember myself." The air stirred, just slightly. The candle flickered. She waited, but nothing moved. No sounds, no breathing. Only the closet, silent, and behind it, the hollow where others had sat, where she had sat, or would sit. She opened the old notebook again, the one bound in red twine, flipped to the middle. There, written in sharp black strokes, "To break the memory, you must leave your mark." Underneath it, a circle drawn in ink, a handprint, small, feminine, pressed into the page. Beneath it, "Acknowledge the soul dwelling." Hiroko stared at the ink-stained pen, then dipped her finger in it, pressed her hand onto a fresh page. It came out smudged, like the shape of a person trying to escape through the skin. She flipped to the next page, another circle. This one, blank, waiting. She didn't know what possessed her next, only that her hand moved without permission, and in smooth, practiced strokes, she began to sketch. Lines formed a face, her own, then the room, then the closet, then a second figure inside it, smiling, not sinister, just content, as if it belonged there. She blinked and dropped the pen. Her hand was shaking. The page was soaked in black ink, but her fingers were dry, completely clean, as if nothing had touched them, as if the drawing had drawn itself. She stood, backed away. Her foot hit something soft. She looked down. The blue hoodie, laid out perfectly on the floor, folded, fresh, but now embroidered. Across the inside hem, "Welcome home, Hiroko." In thread, the color of dried blood. The lights flickered again. Her laptop, powered on by itself, opened to a design file, a new one, unlabeled. The artboard was blank, except for a text layer, in a font she didn't remember downloading. It read, "Do not abandon your post." The apartment began to hum, low, electrical, mechanical, like a machine warming to life. The floor beneath her vibrated slightly, almost imperceptibly, but enough to make her toes tingle. The closet opened, just a crack, not violently, gently, patiently, and from the darkness inside, a breath. "You're almost ready," she screamed, not in fear, in refusal. "I am not a part of this." She grabbed the hoodie, the notebook, the pen. She ran to the door and slammed her fists against it, kicked it, screamed again. "I know who I am. I am not a memory." And for the first time, the room answered. The ceiling creaked, the lights buzzed, the closet slammed open and then shut again. The windows fogged from the inside, and the word "stay" appeared in the condensation. Hiroko collapsed to the floor, face in her hands, shaking, exhausted. And when she looked up, the word was gone. The room was still. The lights were normal. The candle had burned out. And the pen was gone. But the sketch, still there, still wet, still drawing, her reflection now had two faces, one smiling, one asleep, both hers, neither hers. She started checking the mirror every morning, not to see how she looked, but to see who had woken up. Most mornings it was her, or close enough. Same face, same hair, same voice when she whispered her name aloud. But sometimes, just for a moment, there was a hesitation in her reflection, like it was waiting for her to blink, to fall behind, so it could get ahead. One morning, she found a note on the kitchen counter, written in her handwriting, but with a curl to the Y and a loop in the R she never used. "Meeting confirmed, noon tomorrow. Wear something clean." There was no signature, no context, no memory of writing it. She checked her calendar. A new event had been added. Design consultation. Location, Zoom link. Time, 12 p.m. Client, Mr. Aoyama. She didn't know a Mr. Aoyama, didn't recall taking on any new projects. But when noon arrived, she watched helpless as her laptop booted up on its own. The Zoom window opened, and she appeared on screen, smiling, hair tied back, wearing the red blouse. Hiroko backed away slowly from her desk, watched the version of herself speak fluently, kindly, professionally. The meeting lasted 17 minutes. Her doppelganger nodded, took notes, shared her screen, responded with practiced charm, then ended the call and closed the laptop, all without acknowledging Hiroko standing just meters away. She checked the meeting recording afterward. It was gone. No files, no cache, no trace. But the client emailed her 20 minutes later. "Thanks again for today, Hiroko. Your clarity always helps." She replied only one word. "Who?" No response. She stopped sleeping, or tried to, but her body gave out after 2 days. And when she woke up, her bed sheets had been changed. A fresh cup of tea was on the desk, and a new logo concept had been printed and pinned to the wall, signed HN, date, yesterday. Her hand was stained with graphite, and her reflection, smiling faintly, smiling first. Later that night, she walked the halls of the building, hoping for answers or witnesses or proof that someone else lived here besides her. She knocked on 3 different doors. No answer. The 4th opened, An old woman stood there, hair pinned back, dressed in a faded yukata. She looked Hiroko up and down, then said softly, "You're still resisting?" Hiroko swallowed hard. "Do you know what's happening to me?" The woman nodded. "You're still new." "I've been here for weeks." "Exactly. You're still trying to own your name." "What does that mean?" But the woman just gave a thin smile. "You're asking the wrong question." "Then what's the right one?" Her eyes turned distant, as if reading from a memory not her own. "The right question is, who did you replace?" And then she closed the door. Hiroko walked back to her apartment in a daze. At the door, she saw something tucked beneath the mat, a small envelope. Inside, one photograph. She turned it over. It was her, standing on the balcony of room 201. But she wasn't alone. A second figure stood beside her, blurry, faint, wearing the same hoodie, same pants, same posture. Two Hirokos, one smiling, one turned slightly away. The photo was dated 3 days ago, but she had no memory of standing on that balcony, let alone posing for a photo. Back inside, she found a new item on her desk, a laminated badge with her name, her face, and a title, Unit 201, Shadow Occupant, Active Duty. She laughed, not because it was funny, because it felt inevitable. She was being filed, labeled, processed, given a role in whatever strange system governed the walls of this place. The closet wasn't just a haunted space. It was an office, a ritual, a portal for identity exchange, and she had clocked in. That night, the door opened, not the closet, the front door. Despite the broken key, despite the sealed lock, it opened, and a girl walked in, younger, eyes wide, dragging a suitcase. She looked around confused, then looked at Hiroko. "I think this is my apartment?" She didn't speak, couldn't, because behind her, the closet creaked, and inside, it shifted. A breath, a sound like paper sliding. The girl blinked, suddenly unsure. "Wait, are you subletting?" Still, Hiroko said nothing. She couldn't tell if the girl could see her, or if she was only speaking into a room that already had a new memory. The girl frowned, then slowly backed out, closed the door. Hiroko turned to the closet. It was open now, fully, and inside, a suitcase, neatly packed, with her name on the tag, Hiroko Nara, room 201. She didn't pack it, but it was hers. Every item inside was familiar, clean, labeled, folded in the way she never folded, like someone had prepared her for departure or dismissal, a silent administrative eviction. But from what? Her life? Her identity? Herself? She sat beside the suitcase, listened to the apartment breathe, and waited until the light dimmed, and the room, ever patient, whispered, "You're almost done."
The suitcase remained by the door, patient, packed, like a silent invitation or a final request. Hiroko hadn't touched it since it appeared. She knew it was hers. That wasn't the question anymore. The real question was, who packed it? And who would wear her skin when she left? She spent the morning gathering what she could. Not belongings. She had accepted those meant little here. She gathered clues. The red-threaded note, the black ink sketches, the pen that had vanished and reappeared now beside her pillow. Each item placed carefully in a circle on the floor, not drawn in chalk, but in intention. Old stories came back to her, stories her grandmother used to whisper when she was young, about spirits that didn't float or fly, but inhabited. They took root, lived alongside you. They didn't haunt, they waited. And when you were hollow enough, they filled you. She needed help, but not from a locksmith, not from the police. She needed permission to leave. And in Tokyo, there were people who still remembered how to ask. It took 3 hours to find her. An old woman who sold hand-carved charms in an alley behind Nakano Broadway. She wore 2 coats even in the heat and smoked from a long, brittle pipe. Her name was Maizono. Hiroko didn't tell her everything. She didn't have to. Maizono looked at her for less than a minute before speaking. "You're living in a forgotten apartment." Hiroko nodded. "Room 201, she said. The woman exhaled smoke. "That room has a mouth, not a door, and you've been feeding it." Hiroko swallowed. "Can I leave?" Maizono didn't answer at first. She looked to the sky, then to the earth, then at Hiroko again. "You didn't acknowledge her." "Her?" "The one who came before you, the one you replaced. You moved in without thanks, without offering, without permission. The room doesn't like ungrateful guests." "Then what do I do?" The old woman began to gather items from her shelves. A red candle, a stick of camphor, a small square of cloth yellowed with time, and finally, a mirror, cracked, blackened at the edges. She handed them to Hiroko. "At 1:33, light the candle, burn the camphor, sit in front of the mirror. Leave out her name if you know it, and say this: 'I see you. I know this was yours. Thank you for letting me borrow it.' That's all. Don't ask for more, don't beg, just thank her." Hiroko hesitated. "And if I don't?" Maizono's eyes sharpened. "Then you'll wake up one day and someone else will be thanking you." That night, Hiroko prepared the room. She cleaned it for the first time in days, wiped down the desk, swept the floor, laid out the mirror, the candle, the camphor on the mat. She kept the suitcase closed. She turned off every light and sat cross-legged, facing the mirror, now placed directly in front of the open closet. At 1:32 a.m., the air shifted. The floorboards cooled, the walls drew closer. At 1:33, she lit the candle. The camphor caught instantly, sharp white smoke rising fast. And in the mirror, she didn't see herself. Not at first, just the room behind her. And then, slowly, a second shape. In the closet, cross-legged, head bowed, sketching, like every night before. But now, she looked up, face still in shadow, then slowly turned toward the mirror. Hiroko felt her throat tighten. She bowed her head, closed her eyes, and whispered, "I see you. I know this was yours. Thank you for letting me borrow it." The candle flickered violently. The camphor flared, then extinguished.
the room grew very still. When Hiroko opened her eyes, the mirror had changed. Now she saw her reflection, just hers. No delay, no lag. But the closet behind her, empty. For the first time, truly visibly empty. No sketching, no breathing, just space, dust, silence. She slept on the floor that night, deeply, dreamlessly, for the first time in weeks. And when she woke, her phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. Permission granted. You may go, but leave the door open. She's ready now. Hiroko walked to the closet. The floorboards didn't creak. The air smelled like old incense. She opened it wide, took the pen from the desk. The final page of the notebook was blank. She wrote, "I was here. Thank you for remembering me." Then she placed it back inside and closed the door. The suitcase was still waiting. She picked it up. The handle fit perfectly in her hand. She took a last look around the room, and for a moment, she missed it. Even now, even after everything, because the silence hadn't just been haunting, it had been company. A quiet that had watched her fall apart and never asked her to explain. She stepped into the hallway. The door behind her stayed open, and inside, a shape began to sit, cross-legged, head bowed, sketching. The candle flickered once, then went out.
The morning light was soft again, muted but warmer. Hiroko stood at the top of the stairs, suitcase in hand, staring down at the entrance to the building. It was still early. The city outside hadn't begun its usual hum. No traffic, no chatter, just the low buzz of power lines and the distant rumble of a vending machine cooling its drinks. Her body felt lighter, not relieved, not free, but hollowed, like something inside had been emptied with care, like a room cleaned just before someone new moved in. She descended the stairs slowly, each step echoing too loudly in the quiet. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. She knew. The apartment was no longer hers, and maybe it never had been. At the front gate, she stopped. The mailboxes were lined in a crooked row, each one labeled with faded name tags, except hers. Unit 201, no name. Just a strip of red paper where the label had been. She reached out, touched it with 2 fingers. The paper was warm and pulsing slightly, as if breathing. She turned away, walked into the gray light of morning. She made it 5 blocks, turned right toward the station, but something in her chest pulled her back, a weightless thread. Not fear, not regret, something else. Completion. The sense that one final thing remained undone, that the door wasn't fully shut, not yet. She returned to the shrine behind the vending machine, the small one, forgotten, hidden. There were no worshippers, no signs of maintenance, just a crumbling stone slab and 2 rusted offering bowls, now dry and filled with leaves. But the energy was alive, old, watching. She knelt before it and reached into her pocket. From within, she pulled the last item that had remained with her from the apartment, the cracked mirror, still blackened, still holding a faint reflection of her, just a second too slow. She placed it in the offering bowl, then bowed, twice, clapped, once, whispered. She stayed. I left. Thank you for keeping the record. As she rose, the wind shifted, not strong, just sudden, enough to lift the leaves in the bowl and scatter them into the street. The mirror tipped gently and cracked one final time into 4 clean pieces, as if breaking apart the last image it held. That evening she checked into a hotel near Shinjuku. Cheap, anonymous, walls thin and beige and unfamiliar. She didn't unpack the suitcase, didn't open it, didn't want to see what had been packed for her. It didn't matter anymore. She was between selves, not the woman who entered room 201, not the one who lived in it, and not the one who left. Something in her name had softened, blurred. She wrote it down on the notepad near the bed. Hiroko Nara. Then stared at it for a long time, wondering if it would still sound like hers in the morning. That night, she dreamed. She was standing in the apartment again, room 201. But it was brighter. The walls had color, a pale blue, the floor freshly mopped. And in the closet, the woman sat, sketching, head tilted. She looked up at Hiroko and smiled, not with menace, not with hunger, but with familiarity, as if to say, "You did well." And then she spoke, in Hiroko's voice, but younger, softer. "It's your turn now." Hiroko woke up before dawn, sitting upright in the hotel bed. She was still holding the pen, the one with the black ink. She didn't remember bringing it, didn't remember holding it, but there it was, warm in her hand, still writing. On the hotel notepad beside her name was a new line, not hers. "Your offering was accepted." Back at Yamabuki Heights, a new envelope slid under the door of room 201. Inside, a lease agreement, signed with a new name, new handwriting, new date, but at the bottom, in faded red ink, "Do not open the closet between 1 and 2 a.m. It sticks.